Welcome to In Focus with Ejaz Haider. Our top story tonight is about India-Bangladesh relations. A prominent Bengali language newspaper has reported that Bangladesh Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina did not meet India's High Commissioner despite repeated requests for a meeting in the last 4 months. The newspaper Bhorer Kagoj, which I believe means dawn paper, has also reported that all Indian projects in Bangladesh have slowed down since the re-election of Prime Minister Hasina in 2019. Dhaka, according to the report, is now supporting Chinese infrastructure projects. The newspaper's editor, Shyamul Datta, in an article on the recent tilt of Dhaka towards Pakistan and China, had this to say, and I'm quoting from the article: despite India's concern, Bangladesh has given the contract of building an airport terminal in Sylhet to a Chinese company. Indian High Commissioner Reva Ganguly Das tried for 4 months to get an appointment with the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, but did not get it. Bangladesh has not even sent a note of appreciation to India in response to Indian assistance for the COVID-19 pandemic, unquote. Beijing Urban Construction Group has received the contract for building a new terminal in Osmania Airport of Sylhet that borders India's northeastern region and is therefore considered a sensitive area for New Delhi. India's newspaper, The Hindu, has also reported these developments. According to The Hindu, neither India's High Commission in Dhaka nor the Ministry of External Affairs responded to questions from The Hindu. To discuss this further, we are joined by Ambassador Tehmina Janjua, former Secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We'll also be joined shortly by Joseph Cheng, a political analyst from China, Rajiv Desai, a public affairs analyst who joins us from Delhi, and Barrister Mohammad Molla, who joins us from London. Let me begin with Barrister Molla here. Barrister Molla, the state of relations, there seems to be somewhat of a coolness setting in, I believe, following India's National Citizens Register and also the Citizen Amendmentship Act. Do you think that this is a resetting, or is it just one of those rough patches?
What I can understand is that Bangladesh is trying to balance its relationship very carefully between India and China. However, it is true that China has huge influence nowadays in Bangladesh. But the friendship between and the relationship with Bangladesh and India under this regime is trusted, and it seems very solid. You have seen that Indian Foreign Office has given a note of thanks to Bangladesh in response to the query about Kashmir, that Bangladesh still considers Kashmir as part of India's internal matter. So it shows that though Bangladesh is showing its keen interest, or it's more, the relationship is more towards China, but the relationship is still with India. It is not that cool, or the relationship is still there, I would say, and it has not been deteriorated as some people may think of.
Okay, now here's the scenario. Recently, as you might have noticed, China-India relations have seemed to have hit a new low following clashes in eastern Ladakh. Now, obviously, there is a disengagement process in the works. China and India also have a fairly high volume of trade at around $86 billion. So despite this rough patch, I think both sides will begin to work out things. But I'm interested in finding out that do you think that given this rivalry and the realignments with the US Indo-Pacific strategy and the rest of it, that it might become increasingly difficult for Dhaka to balance between China and India, or do you think that's not going to be a major concern?
No, it will be difficult, and it seems to be difficult, and because China is very keen on internal affairs of Bangladesh, and China will try to get more support from Bangladesh. And Bangladesh is in a very strategic position, both for India and China. And Bangladesh is strategically very important for China. It is very obvious. I think it will be very difficult for Bangladesh to make balance. And the time will say how Bangladesh will try to make balance. But it is very clear that China's influence is growing very fast. And China is in better off securing and having much more leverage in Bangladesh.
Right. To so much, that was Barrister Mohammad Molla speaking with us with reference to India-Bangladesh relations and how Dhaka will or will not be able to balance its relations between Delhi and Beijing, especially if the rivalry between India and China becomes deeper. So let me go to Mr. Desai here. Mr. Desai, what is your reading of the situation?
Oh, I think it's a fumble with Bangladesh on India's part. There was the land boundary agreement, as we all know, and relations seem to have been firmed up a bit until, for their own internal political reasons, the government introduced the National Register of Citizens and the Citizenship Amendment Act, where Bangladesh became a dog whistle. Basically, that act was to encourage minorities from neighboring nations to come to India and take citizenship. But we all knew what it meant, basically, that they were continuing their anti-minority agenda. So I think that got Bangladesh a bit alarmed, and in that sense, Bangladesh became a dog whistle. And they have elections now coming up in Bihar and in Bengal. So we can expect the turmoil to simply increase, because for them, it seems to me, for the ruling party, it's very important. Winning elections is the most important thing of all, and they will do anything they can to retain their majority. So, or to win a majority. Sorry, but the fact is that Bangladesh is alarmed by this whole thing, and then comes this business with the High Commissioner, and we have a foreign minister who we expected a lot more from him. He hasn't seemed to have stepped up to the plate, but then nobody has stepped up to the plate, and there's only one person at the plate. And so we are suffering the slings and arrows of authoritarian mindsets that prevail in the ruling party.
Mr. Desai, I agree with you. Dr. S.J. Shankar is a very seasoned diplomat, but my own sense is that he's now part of a team which ideologically is geared in a way that I don't think that Dr. Jaishankar can really step up to the plate, as you put it. We have also seen that since the second avatar of this BJP government, relations with all neighbors have essentially deteriorated. With Nepal, and as you know well, Nepal actually gives soldiers for the Gorkha Regiment of the Indian Army. Bangladesh, the most friendly government, is also not entirely happy. Pakistan, of course, is, there is no dialogue process with Pakistan at the moment. China, again, as we... So, give me a sense of why you think India's neighbors are so unhappy with India at this point.
Well, because, they've done fairly unacceptable things. The CAA is a problem. There are all kinds of issues. Now, when we had the China issue and in the Gawang Valley, we had the BJP government step up and say that, no, nobody has entered India, and no posts have been captured. And then next thing we know is that, in fact, 20 soldiers have died, and they're looking at a new buffer zone, and most of that buffer zone is in India. So they've lost territory. They've lost the fight in China. They were not quite successful with that whole business with Pakistan and Kashmir. They have emaciated Kashmir by making it a union territory and stuff like that. So they've just gone completely recklessly with only one objective in mind, which is to capture a majority in the upper house of parliament, where they don't have one. And so they want that. So now they're destabilizing, for example, they destabilize the government of Madhya Pradesh, they're destabilizing the government of Rajasthan, and they want to win Bihar and Bengal. If they do that, then they'll have their majority in the Rajya Sabha, and then you will have an authoritarian dictatorship.
Well, it seems to me that developments, frankly, threaten the kind of soft image, the soft power that India had begun to accumulate over the last three decades at least. And that soft power is now eroding. Internationally, the questions being raised about what's happening in Kashmir, questions being raised about what's happening to the minorities in India, questions being raised about the whole Hindutva ideology and what it stands for and the fascism that is latent in it. It seems to me that, a senior respected analyst like yourself and a citizen of India would be greatly, I would say, concerned about these developments.
Oh, yes, of course. I have expressed this very often. I express it on Indian television too, that, you heard of, it's not so much the latent fascism and authoritarianism that we've known for a long time. And I think somehow that agenda of theirs can only stick if they get the Rajya Sabha. But the fact of the matter is that at this point, we are in a Clouseau moment. Are you familiar with Inspector Clouseau? The detective from, okay. Yeah. We are in a Clouseau moment. Where, so we have a situation where the leader of the Indian government goes to Bangladesh and congratulates congratulates the prime minister there and says, well, she has done very well to fight terrorism despite being a woman. So, you've got all this...
no, this is brilliant because, I'll actually ask my producer to play the Pink Panther tune here when you mention Clouseau here. But thank you so much, Mr. Desai, for your insights. Let me go to Ambassador Janjua here. Ambassador Janjua, you were hearing our Bangladeshi guest, you heard our Indian guest. Give me your sense of, so you were not just, you didn't just have a ringside view, you were a central participant as a foreign secretary and, of course, previously as a diplomat. What exactly is going wrong with India under this government?
Thank you very much, Ejaz Haider sir. I think a lot of the points that have been made by Mr. Desai are worth underscoring. The fact is that he spoke about an authoritarian mindset in India, and that is a reality. And this authoritarian mindset, which, and if I may quote a lot of literature on authoritarianism, speaks of Manshama, for example, speaks of mafia governments. So there is in India at this point a mafia, quote unquote, a mafia government in which a few people sit together and take decisions on all parts of its policy. And it does not take into account what the impact is going to be on the foreign policy and on the neighborhood. It is these people, and if I may say so, these very honorable people continue to talk about and the redrawing of the maps that they've done in the recent past, whether with Nepal, whether in the case of China, whether it's the pronouncing Aksai Chin as a part of India within the Lok Sabha, whether the Jammu and Kashmir 370 withdrawal, and all of that has pointed out to the fact that India is becoming more and more hegemonistic in its policy towards its neighbors, more and more authoritarian, And it is in this idea of authoritarianism that is also pronouncing its policy towards all its neighbors. You've referred to Nepal. You've referred to China. May I also refer to Bhutan and, of course, Bangladesh. Bangladesh, as Mr. Desai has also pointed out, faces a huge problem with the NRC, where in Assam, a lot of the Indians have sort of qualified a number of individuals as Bangladeshis and are intending to put them into concentration camps, quote-unquote detention camps as such, which of course creates a huge problem. As far as Sri Lanka is concerned as well, Sri Lanka obviously wants to have good relations with India, but it has a Tamil problem that is dictated by Tamilian politics in Tamil Nadu. So there's a lot that's happening there. If you're focusing on Bangladesh, if I may point out that there are lots of contradictions that are rising in the bilateral relationship between India and Bangladesh. And the main balance, the barrister spoke of balancing the relationship between India and China. Well, the main powerful balancer in Bangladesh right now is China. It is China that can bring in the finances. It is China that can, in many ways, do the work that has not been completed by India, do more work, development work in Bangladesh as well. And what does Bangladesh want? Bangladesh wants development of its people.
So you believe, that's a very interesting point. So you believe that this is not, I mean, the Indian analysts are talking about Dhaka trying to create a bargaining position. You don't think that this is purely for bargaining with Delhi. You think that we are looking at the beginnings of a resetting of relations in terms of the new ground realities and new realignments?
I won't say to use the term reset because that sort of raises much alarm. But definitely Dhaka is looking at all options, and China is an important option. Bangladesh has an extremely has a leadership which has been there for a long time. I have met Begum Sheikh Hasina for a couple of times, and every time I've met her, she's met us with great affection. So the one solid thing that Pakistan has with Bangladesh is that the people of Bangladesh have strong affection for Pakistan, and we greatly value that. So do the people of Pakistan for the people of Bangladesh. The leadership itself is, no matter how it is portrayed by the media, the leadership itself has been very warm. I met, as I said, Sheikh Hasina twice, once in Milan when she went to the ASEAN Summit, and once when I led the Pakistan delegation to the Conference of Foreign Ministers of OIC. At both occasions, it was extremely warm and very forthcoming. And I understand the conversation between our Prime Minister and Sheikh Hasina recently was extremely warm as well.
Okay.
As for obviously, there are issues that we don't necessarily agree to, and that's fine. But yet, yes, our relationship with Bangladesh is based on solid grounds, and it may have run into some problems, but at the end of the day, we have great respect for the people of Bangladesh, for the government of Bangladesh, and I'm sure the Foreign Office is working very hard to also reach out, and so is the Bangladesh Foreign Office.
The Prime Minister made a call to Sheikh Hasina also, and I think after that 20-month sort of hiatus when we didn't have a High Commissioner in Dhaka, we finally have a High Commissioner since January this year, and things seem to be looking up. But thank you so much. That was Ambassador Tehmina Janjua, former Foreign Secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, speaking with us. We're also joined by Joseph Cheng, a political analyst from China, joins us from Sydney. Mr. Cheng, we were talking about the Bangladesh, the Chinese infrastructure investment in Bangladesh, and the fact that in terms of the overall view of the BRI, the eastern approaches which involve Nepal, Bangladesh, Myanmar. Give us a sense of the Chinese investments in Bangladesh.
Yes. Whenever China suffers from a setback in terms of its relationship with major powers, it tends to place more emphasis on third world countries, especially those which are its neighbors. Bangladesh enjoys a strategic partnership with China. China has very substantial aid commitments to Bangladesh, up to $30 billion US. And as you said, China has many infrastructural projects being carried out in Bangladesh at the moment. Bangladesh has just received a almost complete duty-free treatment in terms of its exports to China. But we understand that China enjoys a very handsome trade surplus in its trade with Bangladesh. It is now building an airport in Sylhet. So it is natural and likely that Bangladesh will engage in certain gestures to please China and to tilt towards China somewhat. But it is not expected that Bangladesh will maintain its balancing policy. Certainly, Bangladesh has been eager to be involved in the Belt and Road Initiative, but up till today, it has been paying a lot of attention to the basic fundamental interests of India. And India has certainly not given up on Bangladesh. Today, I think there is a transfer of locomotives from India to Bangladesh. And we must remember also that the United States is also a factor at work. The United States certainly doesn't want to see Bangladesh moving too close to China.
Now, this is very interesting. Before you joined us, we also had an expert from Bangladesh, and he thought, and he's a barrister who looks closely at these issues, he thought that increasingly, given this US factor, given the fact that India is moving closer to the United States, given the fact that India-China relations have kind of nosedived ever since the Eastern Ladakh events, that it will become increasingly difficult for Dhaka to do this balancing act. So also, Indian reports with reference to the Chinese infrastructure investment, they basically are concerned about the fact that Dhaka is moving towards Beijing. So that factor cannot really be ignored.
Yes, balancing act is usually difficult. But as I was arguing, there is no basic rationale or incentive for Bangladesh to give up this balancing act. Certainly, by completely towing the Chinese line, Bangladesh will endanger its security. Bangladesh certainly values its good relationship with India. It values its membership of the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. A balancing act, even during difficult circumstances, can still achieve handsome payoffs to Bangladesh from both China and India, and this is exactly what Bangladesh is hoping to achieve. As I was saying, there is also the US factor.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark. That was Joseph Cheng speaking with us. We shall take a short break and return to discuss a report that says the novel coronavirus might not have originated in China's Wuhan. Stay with us. Welcome back to In Focus. Our second story tonight is about a report in the UK news magazine, The Economist, which says the novel coronavirus might not have originated in Wuhan, China. Dr. Peter Daszak, head of Eco Health Alliance, a non-governmental organization, thinks the novel coronavirus is likely to have originated in Myanmar, Laos, or Vietnam. He thinks that while a lot of attention has gone into studying bats in China, few people have looked at bats in countries on the other side of the border. Yet these places are likely to be an evolutionary hotspot for coronaviruses. But this still doesn't explain how a virus whose ancestor may be found in Southeast Asian bats went on to start a pandemic from central China. China has agreed that a mission led by the World Health Organization can visit later this year to help answer this question. There is particular interest in how much sampling has been conducted to look for the missing link in places like the wildlife market in Wuhan, which was the first known center of the outbreak, and more generally in farmers, traders, and possible intermediate or host species. To discuss why it's important to know where the virus originated, we are joined by Professor Derya, who works at the Jackson Laboratory for Genomic Medicine at Farmington, Connecticut, and Dr. Patrick Tang, Division Chief of Pathology Sciences at Sidra Medicine in Doha, Qatar. Let me begin with Professor Unutmaz. Professor Unutmaz, is this like what, an academic interest issue about where the virus originated, or is there some specific reason for it? I mean, a reason which can lead us to better understand it or to figure out the vaccine and the rest of it?
Yeah, I don't think it's an academic question at all. I think it's a very, very important question. I mean, if you think about it, a virus that has brought the humanity to its knees, we don't know where it came from. This is an important question we have to answer. And there are some really very puzzling aspects of this, how this virus originated, because the nearest member that resembles this virus, which is called the rat G13, which is derived from bats, is only 96% identical. So there's a 4% difference. And that's a huge in terms of virus sequences. So where did this come from? How did it pass to humans? And how it is so infectious and so well adapted to human cells are very important questions we have to answer.
Right, that's very interesting. Let me come back to you. But let's pull in Dr. Tang here. Dr. Tang, Professor Unutmaz says is not an academic question. It's a very important question. How do you look at it?
Well, I definitely agree. It's not an academic question. Of course, right now we're facing a global pandemic where the priority is to control the outbreaks that are happening in many different countries. And one, definitely to look for the source of the virus is important, but it would definitely be backseat to some of the control efforts that we're having right now to make sure it doesn't spread further and cause more deaths worldwide. It's important to know where the virus came from because we need to be able to prevent future pandemics and understand the path that this virus took from becoming an animal virus to a human pandemic virus. And also, we would also want to know if there is a continuing source of this virus in nature where we haven't found it yet, and there's a potential for it to continue to transmit to the human population. But definitely, if you compare it to what's going on right now, the importance of this would definitely pale in comparison to our control efforts for the current pandemic.
One of the things that the Economist article says is that in Vietnam, there were just about 300 cases and there was no mortality in Vietnam. So there was a sense that in Myanmar or Laos or Vietnam, people might have developed these immunities against this virus. So do you think it's also important with respect to that in terms of figuring out what the virus is and how it operates?
Definitely, that's a very important theory that has to be investigated further. There are many reasons why there would be a low number of cases in Vietnam. Definitely, they may not have done enough testing to look for all of the mild cases that might be circulating in their population. That could be one main factor why they haven't seen that many cases. But definitely, we can't discount the theory that many people might have antibodies against that virus or a similar virus, which made their population immune to it. But that definitely more research has to be done before we can say something like that.
Absolutely. Professor Unutmaz, when I deal with these topics, one fear is that the questioning or the questions might seem pretty sort of pedestrian because you guys are the experts. And we as laypersons do not really understand the intricacies of all this. But so my question here would be that assuming this theory to be correct, and that people in Vietnam or Laos or Myanmar or the rest of the East Asian countries have already come across this virus and developed immunities. Now, it seems to me that they must have reached this stage over a longer trajectory. Now, but when it begins, it's got to begin with the kind of morbidity or mortality that we saw in Wuhan and the rest of the world. But it doesn't seem that there is any record of any such epidemic having broken out in Vietnam or one of these states. So what exactly is going on here?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question, very interesting hypothesis. So incidentally, I just mentioned one virus, rat G13, which I said is the closest sort of the relative of the current SARS-CoV-2 virus. And this virus was actually isolated from some caves or mines in Yunnan. And now Yunnan province just happens to be right next to Vietnam and Laos and just around that region. And so the bats in those areas harbor maybe hundreds, perhaps even thousands of different coronaviruses. And so there was an incident that happened in 2012 that 6 miners there who were collecting these feces from these bats got infected with some virus. We don't know what it is. And it showed very similar symptoms as the current coronavirus. They were very, very sick, and I think a couple of them died. And some of those samples were actually transferred to the lab at Wuhan, incidentally. So it's conceivable that some sort of a coronavirus that resembles, for example, this rat G13 virus, even though it is a bit different, its spike protein, the one that binds to the receptor ACE2, is quite similar to the current virus. So if that population there were infected with a more sort of a milder version of these family members, if you like, they might have conceivably developed some sort of an antibody or T-cell responses that protect them. I mean, this needs to be tested. It is still a little far-fetched right now without the evidence, but it is certainly conceivable given all these circumstantial situations that have happened.
Okay. Dr. Tang, as Professor Unutmaz said, that this needs to be tested. Now, tell our viewers, most of us are lay persons, how exactly does this happen? I mean, what are you going to do in order to test these hypotheses?
Well, there's many things that can be done. One thing is to go sample more bats. That we have definitely undersampled the bats that are out there in that region. So you mentioned that one cave in Yunnan that everyone is talking about, but there's lots of other caves and lots of other habitats for bats in that region, not just in China, but in the neighboring countries. So definitely we have to step up the efforts in sampling bats and looking for similar coronaviruses in bats. And the other is exactly as the article had alluded to, which is to look for antibodies and immunity in the people in Vietnam or Laos or Myanmar, as well as looking for other types of immunity like T-cell immunity against coronaviruses.
Okay, so this is sort of, this effort would obviously, I'm assuming, would be coordinated among various experts working in various parts of the world, sharing the findings and so on?
Well, ideally, this is a coordinated effort. There is a team that's led by the WHO to go into China, and hopefully they would also investigate some of these other neighboring regions to look for any other similar viruses as well, too. So as well as, I know there are other research labs that are also interested in doing this research, and as well as those countries themselves might want to look into as well. So I think there are both coordinated efforts as well as individual efforts by individual labs and groups to look at this, to try to answer this question.
Okay. Thank you. So that was Dr. Patrick Tang speaking with us. One final question, Professor Unutmaz, before I wrap up. So this WHO team that goes there to China, I guess in October perhaps, how would they figure out where this virus came from, and what exactly is, what are the ways in which this can be determined?
I mean, I think that, the first thing to do, and I don't know if the Chinese government is going to allow that, is to really kind of understand how or who was the patient zero, or sort of how it started in Wuhan. So we know that it wasn't this wild animal or the sea market. And there's a lot of suspicions going around the Wuhan Virology Institute, where they study these coronaviruses. And so, this needs to be lifted. So if the Chinese government allows the WHO to go into that institute and maybe check their records and what sort of viral isolates they were working with and sequences, if they haven't been destroyed or eliminated, maybe that will give us some sort of an idea. Or if they can find some sort of intermediary animal, the wild animal, like a pangolin, that could have transferred from the bats and then to the humans. So this will require some really serious, almost a detective work. And again, it requires very close cooperation of the Chinese government.
Absolutely. Requires a lot of detective work. But thank you so much. Always a pleasure, Professor Derya Unutmaz, speaking with us. This is all from In Focus tonight. We shall see you tomorrow at the same time. Keep following our latest updates on social media at indus.news. Good night and goodbye.